if I can't fly with anything else, it'll be a pair of 4055s and a set of headphones. I was working for a black metal band that had a particularly large drum kit and very little space for microphones. My agenda was to find a microphone that I could fit into the space that was provided. I then saw the DPA 4099s and thought these have got to be worth a try. And I believe the first festival we tried them at, myself and the monitor engineer went through and line checked the whole drum kit on a 30-minute changeover. Everything sounded amazing going through, everything fitted on and was inobtrusive, and when she got to the end of the line check and went, wow, okay, I haven't EQ'd anything. It was just that good to start with, that you listen to it, you work your way around, and nothing needed adjusting. You actually had the true sound of the drum coming through. And the band I was working with at the time, it kind of changed the approach of how we were doing things. And everybody talks about you get it right at source and then you mic it. But when you're actually able to recreate the sources that accurately, this was a real lesson in let's not just EQ it on the board and move on. Let's actually go back to those sources and work on them, knowing that they're going to be picked up transparently and accurately. We were starting a Blind Guardian tour. I had a pair of the 4055 sent out to me, and we had them and two pairs of two other microphones that we just did a blind shootout. I think the first thing we noticed with the 4055 was you just have to drop the gains down straight away compared to the others. They're just hotter, just a lot hotter and a lot more low end, a lot more sub. But you've still got all of the detail up to frequency spectrum as well. So you're not having to hype things up. You don't have things that are automatically hyped for you based on a manufacturer's predetermined version of what you want. You've got a good sort of response across the spectrum, and you can just sort of pick out the bits you don't want rather than having to push the bits that you do. But the sub was definitely there. The sub was strong and powerful, and they're loud microphones, they're high output. So for bass drums on metal bands, this has become my mainstay. That's my primary one. If I can't fly with anything else, it'll be a pair of 4055s and a set of headphones. So I went into the office and I started about the 2012s and 2015s, and I did kind of think how different can yet another pencil condenser be to all the other ones I've tried. The first real revelation was putting the 2015s on as overheads. I had a particularly nice system to mix through, and I could hear everything. And instead of it being a festival where your overheads are kind of lost on the wind, but they'll come up on camera phones really loud later, you could just hear the detail. You could actually hear the stereo spread really clearly. Because obviously these big drum kits, they're wide. So it was actually picking up the stereo spread of the cymbals. I had the 2012s on hi-hat and ride. And again, I could pick out the detail to them a lot better than I had been able to previously. So having thought, how different is one pencil condenser to another, the 2015s are spectacular, mainly because of the wider stereo image you can get from them. And the 12s are just hugely detailed. The only shortcoming we found from using them was because we had all this extra information and this extra stereo spread, you could hear things coming through that you hadn't noticed as much before that were kind of lacking a little bit because they weren't in the right place to benefit from that stereo spread. So it actually meant that the 2012s that I had been using then became spot mics for things like the splash cymbals and the second hi-hat. So if anything, swap into the 2015s, let me hear what I had been missing previously in more detail, so that I can add these extra overhead mics in there to start finding these other details.
Wow, so they actually kind of changed the way you were doing the drum kit?
Yeah, very much so. I had the same experience with this 4055s. That changed how I was miking kick drums. The 2015s literally, through the spread and the accuracy, let me find holes in what my overheads have been picking up generally. So rather than just being a wash of generic symbols, the detail and the information was there. You could really hone in on these other things.